What's up, guys, and welcome to another edition of Q&A, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and sometimes Twitter. But again, I could only take questions from YouTube this week because there was an overwhelming response, a bunch of questions on YouTube, so much that I knew I couldn't get to all of them. So I didn't want to ask questions on Twitter and add more to a pile that I knew I couldn't get to. So knowing that there were a ton of great questions on YouTube, I focused on YouTube this week. But again, if you want to ask questions or just interact with me, follow me on Twitter. And also hit that subscribe button, ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I post on the community tab for these questions. Thursdays at 7:30 in the morning, or also so you can be notified when I upload. I upload 4 times a week, so if you're looking for football content during this whole quarantine situation, you want to keep it locked here. But we're going to jump into the first question from Nick Mayfield, who says, "What's up, Quincy? My Q&A question to ask is, how do you think Kevin Stefanski can incorporate all the pieces into the offense evenly?" He's not going to incorporate all the pieces into the offense evenly. Nobody can do that. I think there's going to be a pecking order. I think they're going to run the ball first, so they're going to prioritize the run game. So that's Nick Chubb first. And then you're going to want to get the ball to Odell down the field. Jarvis Landry is going to have a good year as long as he can stay healthy, because he is just going to eat in the situations that they're asking him to be in. It's a very good fit for him. Then you have the guys like Austin Hooper, who are going to be available if you dominate in the run game, and if you can have the success with the wide receivers out on the edge, it's going to leave the seams wide open for him. So boom. And then also you're going to be able to work Kareem Huts in there as a backup running back, yes, but also as a receiving option. If you looked at this offense when it was in Minnesota last year, they actually threw a ton of halfback screens. Expect Kareem Huts to take a ton of that, because Nick Chubb can do that, but that's not what he's really known for, and that's not what you want to waste his touches on. You want to get Nick Chubb carries. So I would say Nick Chubb's receptions are going to go down, and Kareem Hunt's probably going to take a bunch of those, but also it works because Kareem Hunt is also a threat to carry the ball, so you can get away with switching them out even if you're just going to use them in specific roles, because you can't really sleep on Kareem Hunt as a ball carrier, nor can you sleep on Nick Chubb as a receiver. And I think that's why there's going to be so much dynamism in the backfield with that combination. Also with the combination of Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry on the outside with a Austin Hooper down the seam. It's going to be interesting to see how they put everything together, but it shouldn't be too complicated, right? You got good players. You don't need to have the most complicated offense. You just need to put something out there that works, and then let your good players be good players. The next question is from Tommy Murray, who says, "Hey, Quincy, with David Njoku requesting a trade and Vernon restructuring his contract, would it make any sense to trade for Yannick Ngakoue and keep both Vernon and Ngakoue on the roster?" I don't think it makes a ton of sense, because it's not like you're paying Vernon nothing. You're still paying him $11 million a year. And I would assume if you trade for Ngakoue, you would be giving up a draft pick, and also that would come with the caveat of extending Ngakoue. And I don't think the Browns are trying to have anybody long-term on this team that plays defensive end that's not Myles Garrett. I think they're going to get their replacement at defensive end long-term in the draft next year. I think that's at least what they're hoping to do. And Ngakoue, you would have to lock up to a long-term deal. So I don't see that happening. But it would be an interesting fit, right? Because I don't know Ngakoue well enough to know if he can play inside and outside. But it's a very rare trait for a defensive end to have. So I don't want to assume that of him. But again, you would be paying $11 million for Olivier Vernon to back up at best, and maybe having Ngakoue go inside. It just doesn't make a ton of sense when you start to look at the money and the logistics of the defense that would have to go down in order for that to happen. The next question comes from Wally Ahmed, who says, "Hey, Quincy, great channel. Really enjoy your work. Which 2 ex-Browns players that we lost in the last 2 seasons that you feel we're going to miss moving forward?" This is a tough one, right? Because the Browns really haven't lost any valuable players in the last 2 seasons. You could throw in, Jabril Peppers, but I don't think they miss him. The obvious one is Kevin Zeitler, because you still haven't filled that hole. I think the Browns are definitely, if they had Kevin Zeitler with this offensive line, I don't know how it would work out financially, but that would be great. And given that the Browns have the most cap space, they could have definitely afforded it. And then on the other side, Joe Schobert, right? Because he's a signal caller. He's a veteran. The Browns don't currently have that. And I'm starting to be concerned about the ability to find one because it doesn't seem like they have taken the initiative in getting a veteran at the very least. I know they have B.J. Goodson on the roster, but I want a veteran in that role, somebody who has started multiple seasons and has been decent. Maybe they're at the tail end of their career. A guy like Sean Lee could be available that they could bring in. I want a veteran in that role, and they don't have it, so I would go with Joe Schobert, which might surprise some people because I was one of the people saying don't re-sign Joe Schobert, and I still stand by that. I don't think you pay the linebackers a ton of money, but if we're just talking about hypothetically we could extend a rookie deal or something like that, yeah, you could do Joe Schobert. Also, this question goes down to attrition, and the Browns, they stunk for the last 3 years, so they don't really have a lot of players that they lost that were like devastating to lose. You know what I mean? Like, these were players who were mainly on a 0-16 team or a 1-15 team, so not a great list to pick from, but Kevin Zeitler's the one guy who definitely belongs on that list, and then I guess I'll put Joe Schobert on it because he's the best player that they've lost, and he does fill a need. I just don't agree with paying a middle linebacker that much money to do something that I don't think is going to impact wins and losses. That's going to do something that's going to impact wins and losses as much as a edge rusher or even a very talented safety can. The next question comes from Cyprian Johnson, who says, with Mahomes getting a big contract, can you see the Chiefs being able to build a team around him? The highest paid quarterbacks usually don't make the playoffs. And what does that mean for the Browns and Baker? I would push back on that idea that the highest paid quarterbacks don't make the playoffs. They do. They make the playoffs all the time. There are some cases where a guy who isn't that good gets paid a ton of money and that team's never great. And I would say like Matthew Stafford is probably the poster boy of that, where he's a good quarterback but not a great quarterback, but he gets paid like a great quarterback. So with Patrick Mahomes, that's not even a consideration. He's a great quarterback. He is one of the best in the NFL right now. And I don't think his cap number is really going to affect the Chiefs' ability to get talent around him. One, because his high cap number really doesn't hit until 4 years down the line, and who knows what the cap situation is going to be with everything going on. It could be lower, but it could also be bigger, so that $45 million number might not be the same amount of a hit that it is in 2020. So the Chiefs' immediate future is fine. Patrick Mahomes is making $12 million this year. I think maybe $20 million the next year, and then 30, 34, then 45. So those cap hits for the Chiefs are actually very team friendly. Can a team have a good team around a expensive quarterback? Yeah, if you draft well and if you do all the other things well. And that's why you need to have good personnel departments so you can find good, cheap players. It's not impossible. It's been done before. Matt Ryan almost won a Super Bowl on an expensive contract. And in my opinion, he's a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. So, yeah, I think the Chiefs are going to be fine paying Patrick Mahomes however much money because he is Patrick Mahomes. And for the Browns and Baker, I wouldn't worry about this when it comes to the Browns and Baker. The window to get that deal that Patrick Mahomes has, like, you have to look at Patrick Mahomes has played 2 full seasons in the NFL. He won MVP in one and he won a Super Bowl in another. If Baker Mayfield does that and he gets that kind of a deal, it doesn't matter what the Browns pay him because it'd be worth it. There's not a single person watching this video that would want the Browns not to win a Super Bowl in order to not have a $45 million cap hit. So if Baker Mayfield achieves the same things that Patrick Mahomes did in the next 2 years before his contract is up, win MVP and the Super Bowl, I don't care what he gets paid after that, to be honest with you. He deserves it. But given that that's not really likely at this point, you're not going to be paying Baker Mayfield anything close to what Patrick Mahomes got. I wouldn't worry about it. This isn't one of those deals that are given to somebody like a Kirk Cousins that can reset the whole league, because Kirk Cousins is average. He's decent. He's good. He's not great. So more people can ask for that. But the only other person in the NFL that's going to be able to ask for something remotely in the neighborhood of Patrick Mahomes that's achieved that is Lamar Jackson, and he still has to win a Super Bowl to get there. So a deal that's given to Patrick Mahomes isn't going to reset the league. It's just going to, that's just Patrick Mahomes' market. No other team in their right mind is going to give any quarterback the money that they're going to give Patrick Mahomes, because there's not a ton of Patrick Mahomeses. Now, if somebody like Mitchell Trubisky or Ryan Tannehill gets a big deal like that, then it's time to get concerned about what the Browns are going to do with Baker Mayfield, because that would reset the market. Maybe a Dak Prescott deal will reset the market, but Nobody else is money other than maybe Lamar Jackson. Question mark Deshaun Watson, but I doubt it. Nobody else is going to be affected by what Patrick Mahomes got. I guarantee it. Next question comes from SSJ Swift, who says, do you think our system will favor giving Kareem Hunt the ball more often, or do you see him as mainly a receiving and blocking threat going forward? He'll get his carries because Nick Chubb's going to need a breather. But I wouldn't expect his damage to come in carries. I do think he's going to play a receiving role. I think he's going to get a lot of those running back screens that Dalvin Cook got in Minnesota's offense. He got a ton of receptions last year for a running back. I think he's going to take the bulk of the running back receptions away from Nick Chubb, and Nick Chubb's going to take a bulk of the carries. That's how I think it's going to shake out in Cleveland this year. Next question comes from Terry Lair, who says, hey, Quincy, I need to ask you, if there is football this season without fans, how do you think that affect the players, let's say Baker, who feeds off the crowd? This could be good or bad for the Browns. Honestly, I think it'd be good because I think sometimes the Browns as a young team feeds off the crowd energy too much, and sometimes energy in First Energy Stadium can be a little bit chaotic, can be a little bit paranoid, and I think that kind of leaks onto the field. So I think for a young team like the Browns, especially playing in a city like Cleveland, it's just seen so much, it might actually have some positive effects. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to have that massive of effect either way if the crowds are full or if they're not, because these guys, they have to practice every day without fans. They have to, whenever they go to play against teams in training camp and practice with them, they don't have fans. They really only have the competition. And at the end of the day, I don't think players really hear the crowd as much as we hear it on TV. They're normally zoned out. They're normally not focusing on the crowd for good reasons. So I don't think it's going to have that massive an effect. It's just going to be really awkward to watch. The next question comes from Aaron Fox, who says, how do you see Higgins being used this season? Is he wide receiver 3? And do you see Hunt being used as a backup first since he's already out there? Yeah, I mean, I think Hunt's probably going to take some of the Dalvin Cook touches in the pass game, and then he's also going to have some of the BC Johnson things. But I think Rashard Higgins, if you want to know what Rashard Higgins is going to be asked to do in this offense, just watch the 2019 Minnesota Vikings and just keep your eye on BC Johnson, because that's exactly what they're going to ask out of Rashard Higgins. The next question comes from Michael Johnson, who says, how is Chubb ranked number 7 on the league right now? Wasn't he beating out Henry until the very end of the season? He's referring to the fantasy power rankings. I mean, I don't get it. I guess if we're looking at it from a fantasy football perspective, right? Just a strict fantasy football perspective, and I'm not a guru at that. I would say he's probably 7th because he doesn't score a ton of touchdowns for as much production that he gets on the ground. And that's because of Freddie Kitchens and the Browns' inability to block run plays in the goal line last year. I don't think that's really Nick Chubb's fault. So I would say it's probably the lack of touchdowns that makes him 7th in a fantasy football ranking. And I think that's also why Saquon's number 1, because he's the only option on offense for the Giants. But any real running back power ranking, as far as like how they affect their team, has to be either Nick Chubb 1 or Derrick Henry 1. And it's interchangeable which one can be 1 or 2. But that's the top 2 right now. And Saquon Barkley's not even in the top 5 running back conversation. You got guys like Ezekiel Elliott in there instead. But yeah, it was an interesting list, but I'm not a fantasy football guy. I play it, but I'm not like good at it. So maybe there are other reasons. I would guess the touchdowns are why he was ranked so low on that fantasy football ranking. But yeah, it was kind of weird to watch that he was that low. This next question comes from Charles Denko, who says, opinions on how Carl Joseph and Grant Delpit will work together in the secondary. How efficient may they be? I think the back end of the secondary, the safeties, are the biggest boom or bust part of the defense. I think it's trending more towards boom, but I can see where it can be bust because you have 2 players. Carl Joseph has a reasonable amount of experience. Grant Delpit doesn't. There's not a ton of experience on this team in that secondary or on the defense, period. So I do worry about him just not being able to get into the right positions because he's just not going to have the veteran leadership there to help him out. But I think experience is going to be the X factor in how they work together in that dynamic. Next question comes from Praise the Sun, who says, hey, Quincy, I wanted to ask you, what would you personally do with the Browns' extra cap space? Nothing interesting. They made the run at Clowney. He doesn't want to come here, or he wants to sign somewhere else. Okay. You already committed the $11 million to Olivier Vernon for this season. I would say you'll probably save it. Maybe if you want to do something interesting, if there's a team in cap trouble, you can offer to take a big cap number off their hands in a trade and get maybe a couple draft picks in compensation for that, similar to what they did with Brock Osweiler that landed them a guy like Nick Chubb, because this is a team that you would hope isn't going to be in position to have a top 10 pick with their own draft pick. So you might want to get some picks in some creative ways, get some assets in some creative ways, because you're going to start to get to the points where you can't sign guys in free agency anymore. And you're only going to be able to re-sign your own guys. And you're going to have to draft well in order to keep this thing going, or to have the roster be as good as you want it to be. And getting more assets to assist that would probably be ideal. And since the Browns have the most cap space in the NFL, maybe they take a couple bad contracts for some good draft picks if they want to, and do the kind of NBA thing and then cut those guys and just take the dead cap head on for a year and move on like that. That might be a smart use of the salary cap space. I don't see them using it to bring in anybody that they would really want to play. That's all the questions for this week. Thank you guys for asking. And don't forget, if you want to ask a question, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I post on the community tab. I do it 7:30 a.m. on Thursdays. So make sure you're ready, ask your questions, and I take them from there. And also I take them on Twitter. Follow me at Quincy. A lot of fun stuff goes down on my Twitter. But again, guys, thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.